So the NBA's playing tournament is upon us. There is no rest in the NBA if you finish between the 7th seed and the 10th seed. And if I'm honest with you, as a neutral fan, although in some cases I'm not really a neutral fan, but for the NBA, I feel like this playing tournament is the most exciting it's been since the playing was created kind of back in the bubble, but it wasn't really a thing properly in the bubble. So the season after that. So this is the third season that the playing has been a thing. And in my opinion, it's a lot more interesting. The NBA is probably a lot more stacked in terms of quality across plenty of rosters as it was a couple of years ago. Let's just say there's no Charlottes, San Antonios, or Indianas in this play-in this season. In my opinion, a lot of the teams in that playing spot could potentially cause a few issues maybe to a couple of top seeds. So it's going to be interesting to see how the play-in works out. Tonight, as recording, and hopefully when I get this out, the 7th, the 8th seeds play each other, and then Wednesday, the 9 and 10 seeds play each other with the Game 3, the winners of the 9 and 10 game and the losers of the 7 and 8 game playing on Thursday ahead of the playoffs starting on Friday. It is postseason action in the NBA, and I'm absolutely gassed. Leave a like on the video if you're excited for some NBA postseason action. And today's video is kind of just me running down everything that's going to be happening in the play-in. Now, I explained how the play-in worked in the last video, so if you haven't checked that out, I'll leave a link in the description. It'll also be up in the top corner at some point in the video, hopefully around about now, so you guys can check out how the play-in works and kind of how I was talking about it in the West. I didn't really talk much about it in the East because it was already finalized ahead of the final day. So today I'm going to be talking a bit more about the specific matchups, and we'll start off with the 7 and 8 seeds. So the Miami Heat, coming off of an Eastern Conference Finals finish last season, a Game 7 loss as well to the Boston Celtics. They were that one game-winning shot from Jimmy Butler away from actually making the NBA Finals. It wasn't to be, and this season they haven't had as good of a year. They ran it back and they finished in the 7th seed. They go against the Atlanta Hawks, a side who have made an Eastern Conference Finals themselves pretty recently, the actual year before, losing against the eventual champions, the Milwaukee Bucks. So it's definitely going to be a very interesting game, a very kind of tight game, potentially you could say, between the two sides. A lot of high quality players on both teams, and in the end, going up against Boston, the second seed, whoever wins this game, it'll be an interesting 7-game series. I'm not sure who Boston are going to really be wanting out of this game. I don't know who they're going to be wanting to face in a 7-game series. At the moment, though, it's looking a little bit more like Miami might be. Now, Miami have kind of in the play-in run, they've been a team that's challenged for the 6th seed more than they have. They've been looking up, essentially. They've not been challenging for like the 8th, 9th, 10th seed. They've been looking more at Brooklyn, and they haven't been able to catch Brooklyn because Brooklyn, credit to them, have been very good in the second half of the season since trading away KD and Kyrie. They've held their own. Mikal Bridges is next level, but I'm talking a little bit more about in Miami here. Miami against Atlanta then. Miami won the season series between these two sides. They won 3 out of the 4 games, including both of the games at the American Airlines Arena. Miami have been one of the better home teams in the NBA this season, finishing with a 27-14 record at home, and go into this game with a little bit of momentum. They won 4 out of their last 5 games in the regular season before this game on Tuesday. As for Atlanta, though, they've been pretty mid pretty much since the turn of the new year. You know, they've been the side that have been 15th in points per game, 15th in offensive ratings. They've literally just been the most average NBA side. They finished with a 41-41 record, so 500 ball. They haven't had a 3-game win streak since January, but equally, they've only lost 3 games in a row once since January too. So they've been on a lot of 2 games, 2 games, 2 games, 2 games, 1 win and loss. 2 wins, 2 losses. You know, they've been very mid so far in the turn of the new year, but they lost the final game of the season against the Boston Celtics. So, you know, if they carry on going like they have been doing since the turn of the new year, maybe they could cause an upset and win that one. It's going to be an interesting matchup between the two, though. Miami are probably going to be without Kyle Lowry. He played 10 minutes in the final game of the season and has had a lot of leg issues so far this season. Miami probably also will be without Max Strus as well, who's a very competent role-playing shooting guard for them. A person who can knock down important shots in the playoffs and knock down quite a few important ones last season as well. But the fact of the matter is, no matter who Miami have injured, no matter who they have unavailable to them, Jimmy Butler is one of the best playoff performers in NBA history, and especially since he moved to Miami. He was one of the main reasons that Miami ended up getting to the finals in that bubble year in 2020, and he absolutely carried that Miami team, in my opinion, throughout the playoffs last year. Played 48 minutes, every single minute, didn't get a rest in the Game 7, and ultimately was very close to actually winning the game for Miami at the end with that buzzer-beating game-winning shot that he just missed. So any team that has Jimmy Butler on it, you're going to back in the playoffs. However, Atlanta are the more fit team. They've got everyone back. Trae Young missed a few games towards the end of the season with illness, so there was people maybe speculating if he was going to be available or not. DeAndre Hunter's missed a few games as well towards the end of the season, but they will both be back and available for the game later today. So when it comes to it, Atlanta probably have a bit more of a stacked team than Miami, but Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, I reckon that'll be enough to send them over the line, especially given that you don't really know what to expect from the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young is probably one of the best scorers in the NBA. They also have the likes of DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, like I said, Bogdan Bogdanovic, a very deep roster that the Atlanta Hawks have, but the all-star value that the Miami Heat have, it's going to be tough to break them down, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens in that one. Now, the winners face Boston in the first round. Now, obviously, the last time that Boston faced Miami in the playoffs was last season in that Eastern Conference Finals 7-game series that Boston won 4-3. The last time that Atlanta faced Boston in the playoffs was back in 2016. Remember that time for the Atlanta Hawks, a very good time. A first-round victory for Atlanta as the first seed that season. They beat Boston in 6. So Boston will be probably wanting Atlanta, I reckon. They know how tough the Miami Heat team can be in the playoffs. Yes, they've not had the greatest regular season. They've finished 7th, but when it comes to the playoffs, it's a whole different kettle of fish. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that 7v8 game. The winner of that one will face Boston in the first round. Now, later on Tuesday, it is the Timberwolves at the Lakers in that Western Conference 7v8 game. The Timberwolves came from behind to beat the Pelicans on the final day of the season to send the Pelicans down to the 9th seed for the second straight season in a row. And we'll talk a little bit about the Pelicans later on in this video. But the Timberwolves did well to come back and win that game despite a little bit of team tension in there, and we'll definitely get onto that a little bit too. The Minnesota Timberwolves, coming in as the 8th seed, will play the Lakers away from home. However, the Timberwolves have been one of the better road teams in the NBA this season, winning close to 500 ball, 20-21 across the season. However, the Lakers have been pretty formidable, especially in the second half of the season. They have the second best record in the NBA post the All-Star break, winning 16 and losing 7. And LeBron James only played 11 of those 23 games. They had an 83 record when LeBron came back. And it's going to be a very dangerous Lakers side, a very focused Lakers side. We know how dangerous LeBron can be in the playoffs, especially given that he's missed the playoffs the last couple of seasons he missed the playoffs last season as well, missed quite a bit of the playoffs the season before too. So LeBron's going to be out there for revenge. It'll be very interesting to see if the Lakers can win that one, because they are the form team. They ended up 23-18 at home this season and finished the season in very good form, 9-2 in the last 11 games. Now, obviously, that coincided with LeBron James being back towards the end of the season. They did end up losing that first game to Chicago, though, so who knows? But they have been very good towards the back end of the season. Especially, it's been very good to see him finish with a plus record, 43 and 39 in the end. Given how awfully they started the season, they managed to change a few things at the trade deadline and they've absolutely cracked on. So fair play to the Lakers. However, the Timberwolves will be going into this game with a little bit of confidence, though, you got to think. They ended up in this position last season, going against a LA team in the play-in, and they ended up winning it as well, and going up against the Grizzlies in the first round. So if that ends up happening again this season, the Memphis Grizzlies are the 2nd seed, so a little bit of a revenge game maybe after the Grizzlies knocked the Timberwolves out last season. They ended up winning 2 out of the 3 games against LA this season, including one at the Crypto.com arena, the Lakers' home stadium. Whether you want to call it Crypto.com or not is definitely nothing about today's video. It's a bit of a strange one. Rudy Gobert ended up leading the team in points in that game that they won away from home at the Lakers. He probably won't be doing that on Tuesday because, well, we'll talk a little bit about that, I guess, right about now. The Timberwolves will be without Rudy Gobert due to suspension from the Timberwolves. The NBA didn't suspend him, the Timberwolves did, after his altercation with Kyle Anderson on the bench in the game against the Pelicans. Whether that'll be a blessing in disguise, who knows? Because Rudy Gobert isn't exactly the greatest playoff performer. The Utah Jazz have been one of the best, were one of the best like regular season teams consistently for the last few seasons. But when it came to the playoffs, they weren't really amazing at managing to kind of continue that form into the playoffs because Rudy Gobert kind of got singled out. He's a very good defensive player, but when it comes to the playoffs, you kind of need to be able to play many different roles and adjust so much, and Gobert wasn't exactly the best at that. So maybe Gobert not being there might be a good thing. That rhymed. But that's the only player that is out for the Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns has been playing recently, got 30 points in that game against the Pelicans. Anthony Edwards, obviously we know how good Anthony Edwards can be when he shows up. One of the more underrated players in the NBA, in my opinion. So the Timberwolves are definitely going to be coming out to it thinking, they have the experience in the play-in. However, the Lakers have also won in the play-in before. In 2021, they beat the Warriors in the 7 and 8 game. So these are 2 teams that know how to get it done in the play-in. So it's definitely going to be a tight matchup. As for the Lakers, LeBron James, AD, and D'Angelo Russell all sat the final game of the regular season. They're currently probable, but the likelihood is all of them are going to be playing in this 7v8 game. Unless it's an absolutely major injury, LeBron's going to carry on. AD will be interesting to see because obviously we know his injury history. Whether he'll be able to play properly, who knows. Dennis Schroeder missed the last 2 games of the regular season. He'll be back too. Now, the winners of this one, they faced the Memphis Grizzlies. Like I said earlier, this was the 2v7 matchup, the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves last season. Now, obviously, the Timberwolves are a much different team. No Patrick Beverley, Gobert came back, but the likelihood is he might not even play in the playoffs this season. Obviously, the Grizzlies won 4-2 in that one. So, will history repeat himself? Who knows? If the Lakers end up winning this one, it'll be the second time in a row that they've made the playoffs as the 7th seed. They ended up losing against the Phoenix Suns in 2021, 4-2. Potentially had the Suns as well until AD got injured, but that's a conversation for a different video. The Grizzlies and the Lakers have never met in the playoffs in NBA history, so it'll be a first time ever thing. The Lakers did beat the Grizzlies twice out of the 3 games that they played this season, though. So if the Lakers do get through to the playoffs, it'll be interesting to see if the Grizzlies are able to use the experience that they had from last season, get into the conference semis to put down the Lakers, who are very experienced when it comes to the playoffs. Now, when I look at the 9v10 matchup, I said that the NBA is a little bit more stacked in terms of quality across teams. When the Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors are your 9v10 matchup out east, the East is a very, very deep conference, in my opinion, in terms of quality. The Chicago Bulls and the Toronto Raptors have a roster that could compete for that 6th seed, maybe even try and get the 5th seed. These are 2 teams that were playoff locks last season. The Raptors finished 5th and the Bulls finished 6th. This season, they are low-playing teams. So it's going to be very, very tight between these 2 sides, in my opinion. As a Bulls fan, I'm obviously going to lean towards the Chicago Bulls. I'm definitely going to be watching the game Wednesday night, Thursday morning for me. I'm Am I confident? I'm not sure. Who knows what Chicago Bulls are going to show up. The Toronto Raptors, they beat the Bulls twice out of the 3 matchups between the two sides this season. Both of them came at the Scotiabank Arena, and Toronto, one of the better home teams in the NBA. We know that. That's common knowledge. We know that from the 2019 playoff run, how important the Toronto crowd is for the Raptors. They went 27-14 at home this season. The Chicago Bulls were 18-23 on the road. So a game that will play more into Toronto's strengths. You got to say maybe that they're the favourites going into this one, in my opinion. But the Chicago Bulls haven't been bad post All-Star break. They went 14-9, which was the 10th best record in the NBA, and even that's with them losing 2 of the last 4 games of the season. They were doing really, really well up until that Atlanta game. One of the better defensive teams in the NBA in terms of guards, but the Toronto Raptors pose a very different threat compared to a lot of the other teams in the play-in run. The Toronto Raptors are very good at crashing the boards. They dominated Chicago on the glass in both of the games that they won, 47-35 and 52-46, respectively. So if the Raptors can win the rebounding battle, which they're most likely are going to be able to, you probably give them maybe the nod to knock the Bulls out. The 10th seed has also never won a play-in match. Charlotte finished 10th in 2021 and 2022 and lost against Indiana and Atlanta, respectively. So the Chicago Bulls are looking to win the play-in, to become the first 10th seed to win a play-in match in NBA history. Although, like I said, this is only the 3rd real play-in kind of matchup. The Toronto Raptors are looking to get into the playoffs as the 8th seed. Now, obviously, these 2 teams can only play against the Milwaukee Bucks, but that's if they win tomorrow and then win Thursday as well on the road against either Atlanta or Miami. The 2 sides are very well versed in terms of the playoffs. Obviously, the Raptors knocked out the Bucks on their road to the championship in 2019, and the Bucks knocked out the Bulls last season in the 3v6 matchup, my bad. Chicago, though, like I said, very good team post All-Star break, in my opinion. And like I said, probably one of the more inconsistent teams in the NBA too. So who knows which Chicago team's going to show up. DeMar DeRozan, question marks obviously hang over his head. He's not exactly been the greatest postseason performer in the NBA. Zach LaVine, last season, obviously, his playoff run was kind of detrimented by the injuries. He's been very good post All-Star break. And then as for Toronto, they're fully fit kind of too. VanVleet and Anunoby missed the final game of the season through thumb and ankle soreness respectively. But again, in a one-and-done game, you kind of expect them to feature in some capacity. As for the Bulls, obviously, they're without Lonzo Ball, but that's been a formality for the last season and a half. So no real new injury concerns, you'd think, for the Bulls, especially given that the Bulls played quite a few of their stars against Detroit in the final game of the season. So no real new injury concerns for them. It's going to be a very tough matchup between the 2, though. And then finally, the Oklahoma City Thunder against the New Orleans Pelicans. This is the 2nd consecutive season that the New Orleans Pelicans has finished in the 9th seed. And obviously, we know what happened last season. They won in the 9-10 game and then won in the it ended up being the Clippers, so the 7-9 game. Yeah, they did end up taking the Phoenix Suns to the limit as well, taking them to 6 games in that first round matchup. And obviously they'll have the experience taken from that one to kind of impose themselves a little bit on the Thunder, in my opinion. The Pelicans actually finished the season pretty strongly, 9-3 in the final 12 games. However, that loss against the Timberwolves in a game that they led as well at halftime has meant that they'll finish 9th for the 2nd season in a row. They were one of the best home teams in the NBA, though, so being the home stadium, being at the Smoothie King Center, you got to think, 27-14 in the regular season. This is probably going to be a game that they are nailed on to win, especially given that they beat the OKC Thunder 3 times out of 4 this season. However, that 1L did come at home. As for OKC, though, they're kind of going into it with no real expectations. No one expected the Thunder to be featuring in any postseason shenanigans. Everyone just expected them to kind of tank a little bit this season, maybe go for Wemby, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has probably been one of the best players in the NBA this season. 31.4 points per game. He should be NBA, All-NBA first team in my opinion this season. Whether he will be as a 10th seed, not too sure. Maybe that'll detriment him a little bit, but he has been absolutely amazing this season. Josh Giddey's kind of taken a big next step, and then obviously next year they have Chet too. So they're kind of going into this one with a view to maybe get a little bit of postseason kind of experience, and whether that'll only last one game or not, who knows. As with the East, no West 10th seed has ever won a playing match, and like in the East, it's been the same team too. San Antonio losing to Memphis in 2021 and New Orleans in 2022. So the Pelicans, they know how to get it done in the play-in as the 9th seed. The Thunder didn't finish the season too well, 4-6 in the final 10 games, 16-25 on the road as well. They're definitely going into this with no expectations to kind of win. But if they do, that'll be a huge boost to all the young guys on there. The OKC Thunder will obviously not have Chet Holmgren, probably won't have Aleksej Pokusevski as well, but all their main players are healthy. As for the Pelicans, Zion Williamson, obviously news coming out that he'll be missing the play-in and maybe even the first round. He's only played 29 regular season games this season, so it's a tough one for Zion, but the Pelicans have been able to do it without him. Obviously, they got through the whole of the play-in and the first round of the playoffs without Zion last season. A player that they are missing as well, that was a huge part of their playoff run last year, is Jose Alvarado. Now, Alvarado hasn't played since February the 27th, was being reevaluated in around about 2 to 3 weeks at the end of March. So there could be potential that we might see Alvarado at some point. Whether it'll be on Wednesday in that 9v10 game is yet to be known. So he is close to a return though, and if they can get him back, he was obviously a massive part in that playoff run against the Phoenix Suns that took him a 6, and has been a very good option off the bench defensively for the Pelicans this year. Obviously, they can only the winners of that game obviously will have to go through the losers of the 7 and 8 game, and then the Denver Nuggets, which, if I'm honest with you, I think the Pelicans can maybe push the Nuggets to 6 games again. It'll also depend if Zion Williamson can play, because he is an X factor for the New Orleans Pelicans. It doesn't look like he's going to though, but it'll be interesting to see this one. I'm looking forward to the OKC Pelicans game, mainly because just a chance to see these young OKC players, most of them obviously not playing much postseason basketball. Obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did it in the bubble in 2020 with Chris Paul's guidance. He's kind of leading this team now, so it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to it. Obviously, Giddey's first playoff run, Lou Dort, his second playoff run as well. Obviously, he was part of that 2020 team. I forget that this is an OKC team that has a little bit of postseason experience as well. So maybe look at them as dark horses for the play-in. Let me know what you guys think about the play-in this year. Do you think it's going to be one of the more entertaining play-ins? Do you agree with me by saying that the NBA is a lot more stacked and it's kind of up in the air between who's going to get that 7th and 8th seed? I'm very excited to see what happens, and then obviously there is definitely no rest because the NBA playoffs start on Friday. So let me know if you guys want a preview kind of like the one you've watched today about the actual playoffs, and have fun watching the play, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.